Christine crouched over the toilet seat, her breaths coming in shallow, nervous gasps. With a steady hand, she dipped the pregnancy test stick into her stream of urine, keeping her eyes locked on it for a few seconds. After what felt like an eternity but was only a few seconds, she withdrew the stick and placed it on the edge of the toilet seat with trembling hands. Unable to watch, she started to pace the spacious bathroom while wringing her fingers and anxiously tugging her hair. A part of her was trying hard not to put her hopes up, while another part, the desperate part, kept thinking that this might be it. After 4 years of trying for a baby, this might be it. She continued to pace, making a conscious effort to not glance at the stick until enough time had passed for the results to be ready. This was a crucial moment, and the result would either be her biggest miracle or heartbreak. She clasped her hands together and tightly shut her eyes, praying that this moment didn't end as many moments before, in tears. After enough time had passed, she stopped pacing and walked slowly toward the stick. With one deep breath, she glanced down at it, her heart almost stopping when she saw only a single line. Negative. Always negative. Her eyes darted to the reflection in the mirror, and for a moment she didn't react. Seconds later, the pain took hold, and she groaned from deep within her chest, her head hanging as she sank to the floor, unable to support her weight anymore. She tried to cry out the pain. She desperately wanted to, but tears didn't come. The pain was like a fist squeezing her heart, and she almost stopped breathing. But still, the tears didn't fall. "I did everything," Christine moaned, her head falling back against the toilet wall. "I did everything right." Truly, she did everything right. As a woman actively trying to have a baby, everyone thought they had the advice to give, and they freely gave it without boundaries. Christine took every one of them. When the usual way doesn't work, you start to find solutions in unrealistic ways. "Try eating more pineapple," one of her family friends said. It sounded like weird advice, but Christine took it in good faith. She bought a truckload of pineapples and ate it every day. Nothing happened. An old woman at church said, "Put your legs in the air afterward, my darling. It would help the sperm reach the eggs faster. That's how I had my 5 boys." Christine took that too. After intercourse, she would put her legs in the air for about 5 minutes, which weirded Sam out, but he never complained. She did this for a whole month. Nothing happened. Adopt a pet first. Dance under a full moon. Talk to your future baby in your mind. Pray to Goddess Hera. Christine did all of this. Dancing under the full moon was the craziest but desperate times called for desperate measures. But before all this advice, Christine had done everything normal that she could. Ovulation tracking, lifestyle modification, genetic counseling, fertility treatments, and IVF. She even made Sam undergo sperm health optimization. When none of this worked, she tried traditional remedies, herbal supplements, traditional prayers, acupuncture, everything. Nothing worked. It had been 4 years since she had been trying for a baby. Why was nothing happening for her? She was doing everything she could, things she never imagined she would dabble into. She had done them, yet nothing worked. All her friends and family who got married after her already had kids. Some were currently pregnant, but here she was, spiraling over another negative pregnancy stick. Disappointed, she grabbed the stick from the edge of the closet and hurled it against the wall, watching it clatter to the floor. 2 months ago, the doctor prescribed a new medication, which he claimed was a new fertility treatment that other women had spoken great things about. According to his instructions, she took it for 3 weeks and had sex with Sam. She had looked forward to this. She had hoped that this would be it. Why was it so hard for her? She got married as a starry-eyed 24-year-old girl who thought childbirth was easy. She had it planned. Get married early to the love of her life. Have her first child. A girl, hopefully, by 25. And the rest of her kids because she clocked 30. Reality smacked her in the face quickly enough when, 1 year into the marriage, she hadn't gotten pregnant. She started to take things more seriously in year 2, and that was when her struggles began. She had always wanted 4 kids. Now she would take one and be the happiest mother in the world. Christine sank her hand into her hair and tugged at the strands. "What else is left to do?" she whimpered. "I've done everything. What else is there to do?" The front door slammed, but Christine remained on the toilet floor, heartbroken. Moments later, the bedroom door opened, and she heard footsteps. "Christine?" It was her husband, Sam. Before she could open her mouth to speak, a shadow fell across the bathroom floor as Sam walked in. His gaze fell on the pregnancy stick before darting back to her. It was like her tears were waiting for an audience because as soon as Sam walked in, it burst out like a dam. "Oh, sweetheart." Sam reached for her, lowering himself to the floor beside her. "I'm so sorry." "Sam, no," Christine cried, leaning into him. "I don't know what to do." Sam released a deep breath. "Don't worry, we'll keep trying." "Keep trying!" Christine pushed away from him. "I'm tired of trying. I'm tired of hoping, Sam. It's the hope that kills. I really looked forward to this one." "I'm sorry," Sam said contritely, reaching for her again. "How can I help?" Christine didn't think he understood her. He was a man. He never got asked infuriating questions like, "When is the baby coming? What's taking so long?" "Christine," Sam touched her face. "I promise we're on the same team," he said, like he could hear her inner thoughts. "I hate to see you like this, you know what?" "What?" She wiped her tears. Sam rose to his feet, pulling her with him. "Dr. Tim was very confident that this treatment would work," he said. "I've never seen him that certain about any treatment before." "What are you trying to say?" Christine asked, staring at him. "You can see it didn't work." "When is your next appointment with Dr. Tim?" "Sometime next week," she answered. "Good." Sam picked up the test stick and tossed it in the trash. "Let's do a real pregnancy test at the hospital." "What?" Christine whispered. "Babe." Sam held her face. "You know, sometimes these things aren't accurate, especially in the early days of the pregnancy. We need to get a proper blood test done to be certain." Christine felt a flicker of hope, and she didn't know whether to be happy or upset about it. In this journey, hope was a silent killer. Every time she hoped to see a positive result, and it came back negative, something inside of her died. Right now, there was only a little life left in her. Hope was dangerous. But Sam was right. Dr. Tim had told her the same thing. Pregnancy test sticks were great, but sometimes it wasn't accurate, especially for early pregnancies. Sam kissed her forehead and smiled softly. "What day is it next week so I can clear my schedule? I'll go with you." For the first time that night, Christine smiled. She didn't know how Sam did it. He was always cheerful, never showing disappointment at her. It was one of the things that kept her sane. "I'll have to confirm with Dr. Tim first," she answered. "Probably Tuesday or Wednesday." "You know what? Whatever day it is, I don't care. I'm going with you. Okay?" Christine chuckled and wiped off the rest of her tears. "Okay." Sam was a branch manager in one of the popular bank branches in town. As a banker, he was almost always busy. It was hard to reach him at work, so making time to follow her to the hospital was a sweet gesture that she appreciated. Sam started to run a bath. He reached into the cabinets above and picked out one of her favorite strawberry bath bombs. "Come on, babe," he said. "This would help you relax." "You don't have to do all of these," Christine said. "You must be so tired from work. It should be the other way around." Sam rolled his eyes. "It doesn't matter. Get in the bath. When you're done, we can eat and chill." Christine removed her clothes and sank into the bath, groaning when the cold water seeped over her skin. "Thank you, Sam." He waved her off and kissed her forehead. "Listen, I love you, okay?" "Okay. I love you, Sam." "I know," he said. "Never forget that we're a team. We're fighting this together, not fighting each other. Got it?" "Got it," she laughed. "Good." He nodded and left the bathroom. Christine watched him leave with a lingering smile. She didn't know what she did to deserve Sam, but at least that was one thing in her life that she did right. She couldn't imagine going through this pain with another man. It wasn't easy, even with Sam's patience and loving kindness. She leaned her head against the tub, letting all her worries and fears go. There was still a hope to hold on to, and she hoped that her visit to the doctor next week would be favourable. On Tuesday of the following week, Christine prepared to see Dr. Tim. As it always did whenever she was going to the hospital, her heart started to beat wildly. She didn't know what today would bring, but she could only hope and pray that it was different. After the pregnancy test stock showed a negative result, she held on to a small hope that the blood test would say something different. When she called Dr. Tim to schedule this appointment, he told her to keep her fingers crossed. The good doctor always tried to reassure her, but Christine realized she was alone. It wasn't easy to relax or keep her fingers crossed, although she appreciated everyone's good gesture. After trying to calm her racing heart for a few minutes, she picked up her phone to call Sam. She had told him a few days ago that the appointment was for 2 p.m. today, and it was already 1:30. Was he meeting her at home, or should she pick him up at the office? She called him twice, and when he didn't answer, Christine decided to drop by his office and pick him up. He had probably forgotten about the appointment due to work. One would think as a branch manager, Sam had flexible working hours, but it wasn't so. He left home as early as 7 a.m. every morning and didn't return until 6 p.m. He always travelled for work and never had time to take vacations or breaks. He was working so hard for their family, and Christine wished she could, at least give him one child to care for. They both had so much love they needed a baby to channel this into. As she drove towards Sam's office, she forced back tears. This wasn't the time to cry, especially since she would meet Sam's staff and subordinates very soon. She needed to look her best. When she parked in the bank's garage, she quickly checked her reflection in the mirror, touched her powder, reapplied lip gloss, and descended the car. The receptionist, a friendly lady called Simone, smiled when Christine walked in. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Bailey," she greeted. "Long time no see. You look good." "Thank you, Simone. And so do you," Christine smiled. "I'm here to see Sam. Is he in? We have an appointment, and he's not been taking his calls." "Oh, please hold on." Simone picked up the phone, hit a few buttons and put the phone to her ears. After a few seconds, she shook his head. "He isn't taking the call, but you can go right up," she said. "I haven't seen him leave all day." "Thank you." Christine headed to the elevator and bumped her foot impatiently. It was almost 2 p.m., and she hated being late for her doctor's appointment. Not even today that she was in a hurry to get this visit over and done with. Sam's secretary, Alice, wasn't at her desk as Christine hurried towards Sam's door. It was a shame because she liked Alice a lot. "Sam?" Christine pushed the door and walked into the office. "Sam, are you—" "Oh my God." Her hand flew to her mouth as shock and disappointment spiraled through her. Her husband was stark naked, and so was Alice, her thin red hair wild and frizzy, which was evidence of what she'd just witnessed. They froze when they saw her, a look of pure shock crossing their faces. Alice scrambled off the desk, and Sam yanked up his pants. "It's not what you think, Christine." Christine was a fan of rom-coms and romantic melodramas, so she had watched so many with cliché lines like, "It's not what you think," "Please let me explain," and "It was just this one time." She always laughed at this cliché. She never knew it would one day be her turn. As she watched them scramble into their clothes, she felt her heart shatter. She didn't know she was crying until she felt the wetness on her cheeks. "Christine," Sam walked towards her. "Please let me explain." She turned mindlessly and hurried out of the office. Running back outside, she hit weird looks from staff and patrons, further embarrassing her. It was ironic how she had taken careful care of her appearance on her way in, but now she didn't care that her eyes were probably smudged with mascara and eyeshadow. "Mrs. Bailey," she heard Simone call as she ran out of the bank. "Is everything all right?" Was everything all right? Christine almost laughed as she slipped behind the wheels and zoomed out of the bank. If Simone had asked that question on her way in, Christine would have said she was 10%, and that 10% was her marriage, the only good thing in her life. But now, everything was 100% not all right. Her life had just shattered like fine china, and she would never be able to pick up the pieces. She was halfway home before she remembered her doctor's visit. But what was the point? There was no need. With her luck, it was already safe to assume the blood test would also be negative anyway. When she got home, she calmly entered the house and entered the bathroom. This was fast becoming her favourite spot in the house, Christine thought as she leaned on the counter while staring at her reflection in the mirror. Every time she was in pain, this was where she ran to. Her eyes were rimmed with tears, her face stained black and glittery brown with eyeshadow. She reached for some cotton pads in the cabinet above and wiped her face clean. When this was done, she dabbed her face with cold water. She was about to leave the bathroom when the bedroom door opened and Sam appeared. He looked haphazard, like he didn't stop to adjust himself before chasing after her. His buttons were still undone, and so was his zip. His hair was rough, and Christine imagined Alice running her hand through it. As they stared at each other across the room, Christine's heart bled. Sam and Alice had looked so comfortable together. It wasn't the first time they were having sex with each other. Was that why he was always busy? Was that why he was never home? Whenever he went on business travels, he always went with Alice. Was this what they did there? She was so in love with Sam and had always thought he loved her the same way. She met him 6 years ago at an entertainment event, and they kicked it off. They both used to be super fun and outgoing, but that L changed in the marriage. The pressure of infertility was too much. They barely had time for anything else. "I can explain," Sam said, holding his hands like he was trying to appease a child. "Just let me explain." Christine didn't react and Sam floundered. "It was just a casual fling," he said. "I didn't mean for it to happen, babe." "Casual fling that's been happening for years?" Sam blanched. "Only 2 years," he said and frowned. "How do you know that?" "I didn't." She shook her head. "You just told me." Sam's frown deepened, and at that moment Christine saw that he was not remorseful for cheating. He was only sorry he got caught. "Christine, don't be like that," he said, sighing impatiently. "I know I shouldn't have done that, but you can't completely blame me." Christine gaped at him. "What do you mean I can't completely blame you? Should I share the blame with you?" "Yes," he threw his hands in the air, "because you made things so hard. You're not the girl I married anymore." "What? And Alice is the girl you married?" "Alice is..." He ran a hand through his hair. "Alice is different, okay? She's fresh. She makes me forget." "Makes you forget what?" "She makes me forget you," he said. And Christine sank onto the bed, unable to support her weight anymore. She felt utterly drained and wished she hadn't stayed to listen to Sam's sorry excuse of an apology. But Sam wasn't done. He continued to talk. "She makes me forget this marriage, just for a little while. I love you, Christine, but lately it's been so hard with you. Everything is draining." "What are you talking about?" A thick ball of bike lodged in her throat as she looked up at him. She knew she was setting herself up asking for clarification, but she wanted to know what she did to deserve this torment. "Christine, you're always sad," he cried. "You're always depressed. You make it so hard to live with you." Christine stared speechlessly at him. "I needed to find peace and I got it elsewhere. You should do a better job of making me happy, and I swear I won't look anywhere else. It's not like she's better looking than you. There's no reason I should be with her if you were so unhappy and unwelcoming all the time." "I cannot believe you, Sam." "And Alice always looks so put together," he said. "Maybe because she works. You just stay home all day." "Because you told me to quit my job," Christine exploded. "You told me to quit my job and focus on having a baby." She couldn't believe he was using this against her like this. When he brought the suggestion a year ago, she accepted it without complaints because it felt right. When she told her parents, they advised against it, but she didn't listen. "And that's the freaking problem right there," Sam snapped. "The baby, the baby, the baby. Everything is about a baby that you don't have." "Oh, God!" He wielded his words like a knife, and it seared through her like butter. "You are hyper-focused on the baby. You don't think about anyone else. Anytime we have sex, It's boring because you're only doing it for the baby. We never have spontaneous sex. Everything has to be planned to perfection, and it feels like a chore. With Alice, it's spontaneous, it's passionate." He shook his head. Christine didn't believe he was still mentioning Alice in their argument. Right now, he didn't look like the Sam she knew. He looked and talked like a complete stranger. "You know my struggles, Sam," Christine said shakily. "How dare you say this to me?" "It's our struggle," he fired. "Our struggle?" Christine laughed. "You're not the one who gets asked silly questions, Sam. You're not the one who has to deal with the weird looks from your family. Apparently, it's not much of a struggle if you're sleeping with your secretary." "I've told you we can adopt," he said. "It's not a big deal." Christine laughed. "It's that easy for you. I have no issues with adoption, but it's not that easy. You're not the one who will be called a failure. It's me." Sam rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic," he said. "I've been the best husband to you, Christine, because you know you're the problem, right?" "What?" he sighed. "I mean, if I wanted, I could get another woman pregnant right now, but I've been careful. If it's not you, I don't want anyone else." The last hope died in Christine's eyes. It would have been so hard to work her way into forgiving Sam after what she saw, but she could have done it. But with all these things he had said to her, it was impossible to ignore those. The words hurt even more than the image of Alice and his stuck in her head. Without responding to him, she turned away and walked into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. Despite the urge, she didn't cry. She knew she would explode later, but she didn't want to give Sam the liberty of seeing her cry because of how much he hurt her. He began to bang on the door. "Christine! Christine, come on. Please, we can talk about this." She ran the tap to block him out, but her ears still strained to hear him above the water flow. "Christine, I have to return to the office right now," he said. "When I come back, we will talk." She didn't respond, and only when she heard the bathroom door slam did she relax. Christine didn't sleep a wink through the night. She had locked herself in the guest room last night, and even when Sam returned from work, she didn't see him. He had banged and knocked on the door, but she said nothing to him. She had heard enough. Everything he said was engraved into her heart, and there was no taking it back. Through the night, she kept tossing and turning, and it wasn't until the early hours of the morning she made her decision. She was devastated, and it was the only way to cope with such heartbreak. She called her parents and finalized things with them. At 4 a.m., she got up and bought a ticket to go home. When it was almost 7 a.m., Sam returned to her door. "Christine," he knocked. "Come on, baby, please, I miss you." Christine didn't move. She remained on the bed, her heart pounding. She was starting to harden her heart towards him, but it was hard because he was someone she had a lot of affection for. "You're being a baby," he snapped. "We're adults. Why can't you come out and let's talk then?" He paused again, waiting to hear her response. When she didn't respond, he sighed. "I'm off to work, babe. See you when I get back." Off to work? More like off to Alice. Christine waited until she heard the front door slam before springing into action. With all of Sam's antics since catching him with Alice last night, it was evident that somewhere along the way he had fallen out of love with her. She highly doubted that if he were home, he would have stopped her from leaving. The reason why she waited until he left was because she didn't want to say goodbye. If he were right there, it would be hard to walk away. In 1 hour, Christine has packed up all her important stuff. She knew she would have to pay extra at the airport for luggage, but she didn't mind because she was never returning to this house. She would miss it genuinely, but that was okay. What wasn't okay was staying here when Sam already made it known how much he didn't respect her. "I mean, if I wanted, I could get another woman pregnant right now, but I've been careful. If it's not you, I don't want anyone else." She would be foolish to remain here after he said that to her. It was only a matter of time before he would get another woman pregnant. She waited for her Uber on the front porch, and when it arrived, she thanked the driver as he helped her store her luggage in the trunk. Before they left, Christine turned and took one last look at the house, and this time, tears brimmed in her eyes. This was a very huge step to take. Was it the right one? But she didn't give herself time to doubt. She got into the back seat. "Let's go." As they drove away, she didn't look back again. There was nothing to look back at. Her hometown was the opposite of where she was coming from. It was a small, quiet town where nothing much ever happened, but right now Christine found solace here. It had been 2 weeks since she arrived home, and she still cried every night. Her suffering seemed to increase now that she was away from Sam. It wasn't necessarily because she missed him, but because she felt like a loser. Here she was, childless, and now without a husband. Her parents were the most supportive, and she was grateful for them at this low point in her life. It didn't help that she was also sick. She had been vomiting every morning for 3 days now. She planned to visit the clinic later today. Sam had called a few times since she left, but she never picked up. He had also stopped calling, and she wasn't surprised that he didn't put up much of a fight. His attitude during their disagreement was enough proof that he no longer loved her. She felt the urge to throw up again and scrambled out of bed into the bathroom, heaving into the toilet until there was nothing left in her stomach. Exhausted, she flushed the closet and washed her mouth before walking outside to see her mother in the room. "You're still throwing up," Mom said, staring speculatively. "Won't you go see the doctor?" Christine nodded tiredly and fell on the bed. "I'm so hungry." "That's why I'm here," Mom said. "I made breakfast." "I want ice cream," Christine groaned. "But you don't like ice cream." "Right!" Christine sat up, squinting at her mom. "Not only do I want ice cream right now, I want it with hot sauce." Mom made gagging sounds and Christine laughed. "I don't know why I'm suddenly craving that combination. It's kinda nasty." "I'll make an appointment with Dr. Matthew so when you get to the hospital, you get priority treatment." Mom walked towards the door. "And forget about ice cream. Come out and eat real food. You would need it." Christine's mom finally convinced her to go to the clinic later that afternoon. But it was easy because Mom had already called ahead of time, and Christine was quickly ushered into the office of Dr. Matthew. "Good afternoon, Dr. Matthew," she greeted. "Thank you for taking the time to see me." "Welcome, Miss Christine," Dr. Matthew laughed. "How can I help you today? Your mom said you have some complaints." "For a few days now, I've been feeling a little nauseous and vomiting. There's also constant headaches and dizziness." "Okay," the doctor nodded. "We have to take a blood test," he said. "A pregnancy test as well." Christine almost laughed when he said he had to take a pregnancy test. She nearly told him not to waste his time and resources because she was sure there was nothing to see there, but she didn't want to sound too forward, so she let him do his thing. After her blood had been taken, she was ushered into the reception room to wait. As she waited for her test results, her phone beeped, and it was a text from Sam. At first, she wanted to delete it and never open it, but curiosity got the best of her, and she clicked on the icon. The text opened, "The divorce papers should be in your mail by now. I still love you, and if you don't want us to separate, come back home. You have 20 days to respond, according to the court." Christine read this message repeatedly, and each time it felt like a blow to her chest. She didn't know what she was expecting, and she had considered divorcing him herself, but to see that he was threatening her? That was shocking. She was never returning to him, and 20 days was too much time to send him a response. She would do it as soon as she got home. "Miss Christine?" She looked up to see a nurse standing a few feet away. "Dr. Matthew will see you now." "Thank you." Christine headed to the doctor's office. He gestured to the chair across the desk and smiled at her. "Your test results are here." "Am I sick?" she asked, because, considering her poor luck these days, she wouldn't be surprised if she was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Everything came back negative except one. He held up the brown folder. "Oh, God." Her hand flew to her chest. "Please don't tell me I have an STI." Seeing as she had been having unprotected sex with a man who couldn't control his sexual desire, that wouldn't be shocking. Who knew where he'd been? It probably wasn't only Alice. "What? No." "Thank God." Dr. Matthew laughed and slid the folder towards her. "You're pregnant." Christine had waited about 4 years to hear this, but now that she did, she couldn't believe it. She snatched the folder off the desk and skimmed it, her eyes widening when she saw she was 5 weeks pregnant. What? Christine stared at the words, expecting them to rearrange into a negative result magically. I've been trying, she whispered. It's been 4 years. Nothing worked. My God. Her body began to shake, and she felt a plethora of emotions. Unable to contain them, she rose shakily to her feet. Can I come back to see you, doctor? She asked. I need to process this. He smiled sympathetically. Of course. Any time. Thank you. Christine decided to take the long way home because she wanted to have decided before she arrived. Her parents had probably seen the divorce papers in the mail by now and would like to know what to do. She had always imagined how she would react when she finally got pregnant. In all her imaginations, this particular reaction wasn't part of it. She had thought she would scream, dance, or jump for joy. She never thought she would take a long walk, dry-eyed, her mind unsettled. Imagine she hadn't caught Sam cheating. Imagine she had gone to his office that day and he was working like he was supposed to. Then he would follow her to the doctor, and her pregnancy would be confirmed. Their joy would be restored, and they could live happily ever after. But that wasn't the case. She had seen him, and now divorce papers were waiting for her at home. She was so mad at him that she couldn't take out this baby. But the thought of doing that was like a knife stab to her broken heart, and she knew she could never go through with it. She waited so long for this child. It didn't matter whether Sam was in her life or not. She would care for the baby. Although she hurt for what could have been, she didn't want him back, nor did she want him anywhere near her and the kids. Chris? Christine froze on the sidewalk. She hated the nickname Chris, and only one person called her that to annoy her. He had been calling her that since she was 10, and he was 12. His name was Stan, her childhood friend. She whirled in the direction of the voice, her eyes widening to see Stan standing, a soft smile on his face. He looked different in the best way possible. His hair was cropped short, highlighting his face and aristocratic jawline. She had always secretly admired his stirring jawline, even though she teased him for it. He looked very handsome and more mature than ever. Her heart skipped. Chris, he said, taking a step forward. It's been 6 years, he said. Yes. Come here. He opened his arms and Christine ran to him, laughing. They embraced each other, laughing and talking over one another. I've missed you, Stan, Christine said genuinely. It was the first time she had laughed in days. Thank goodness you've grown into your jaw. Stan threw his head back and laughed hard. Then he grabbed her shoulders and held her at arm's length. First of all, Christine, you look beautiful, as always. He had always told Christine she was beautiful, but it still made her toes curl. Thank you. Now tell me what's wrong. What? Her eyes widened. Stan had always been able to read her like a book, but it's been 6 years and there was no way she was still an open book to him. Nothing is wrong. I was just taking a stroll. Thankfully, the result folder in her hands didn't have the hospital stamp. Come on. He rolled his eyes. I know you very well and you look exhausted. Not I've been strolling in the sun exhausted, but deeply exhausted. Christine pulled away from him, bile forming in her throat. It had been 6 years since she last saw Stan. He looked like he was doing very well for himself. How could she tell him everything wrong with her life when she was supposed to be doing great? I've got to go, she said hurriedly, turning away. Christine, Stan pulled her close. It's okay. We can... It's not okay, she cried, tears falling down her face. It's not okay, Stan. Swiftly, Stan pulled her into his arms and led her towards the back of the complex. She didn't realize they'd been standing in front of a shopping complex. There was a private area at the back, and Stan led her inside, shutting the door behind him. Talk to me. Christine didn't talk to strangers or old friends about her struggles, but there was a softness in Stan's eyes that was new to her. She told him everything, including Sam's infidelity and the pregnancy news. When she finished, he nodded and held her close. It's okay, Christine, he said. Don't punish yourself for another person's sins. You did nothing wrong. He should have been there for you. Not accuse you of pulling back when you were in pain. I want a divorce too, she answered, feeling much lighter. She could finally breathe well, and it seemed her head got clearer. She didn't regret telling Stan at all, even though she just met him again a few minutes ago. It felt like time had not passed between them. They had already fallen into their old friendship pattern. "What about the baby?" he asked. "I don't want him in the baby's life," she said. "I want him completely gone from our lives." Stan leaned back in his seat and observed her. "That may be a little difficult." "Why?" "In legal proceedings, they deal with facts, figures, and data, not emotions. As long as you keep the baby, Sam will always be in your life." Christine lowered her head and gently touched her stomach. "I've been trying for 4 years for a baby, Stan," she said. "What do I do?" "Keep it," he said. "You don't have to return to Sam, but this baby is your miracle. Don't lose it because of him." His words sank deep and Christine smiled. "Yeah, you're right. Thank you so much, Stan." 2 days later, Stan took her to an attorney for consultation. She was a friendly middle-aged woman named Linda, and Christine felt comfortable as soon as they walked into her office. They had already called her beforehand, so when they walked into the small professional office, Linda smiled. "Welcome, Stan. How are you? Long time no see." She turned to Christine. "Good afternoon, Miss Christine. Please have a seat." "Thank you." As soon as they were seated, Linda went straight to business. "I understand you've briefed me on the phone, but can you tell me more about your situation? What are our main concerns for this proceeding?" Stan squeezed her hands and she smiled in appreciation. "As I said, my husband served me divorce papers 2 days ago. We've been married for 4 years, and we couldn't have kids. Sam moved on. I caught him with his secretary 2 weeks ago. I feel like he abandoned me because I couldn't have kids." "Does he know you're pregnant?" "I haven't contacted him since he sent me the text about the divorce papers." Christine leaned forward. "I don't want him in my life anymore. Is it possible that I don't tell him about the pregnancy?" Linda sat back in her seat, her face drawn into a thoughtful expression. "Transparency is essential in this case," she answered slowly. "And we cannot completely hide it, because he will find out soon enough and might contest for custody, which will put us at a disadvantage." Christine sighed. "Is there anything we can do?" Stan asked. "Sam really hurts her and doesn't want him in her life." "We could delay announcing the pregnancy," she smiles, not hiding it completely. "What does that mean?" Christine asked. "For now, we can focus on the divorce terms and secure a favorable settlement before adding the element of pregnancy." "I don't want his money," Christine spat. "Yeah, but it's your right," Linda answered. "And that's why I'm here. My priority is to protect your rights and secure a stable future for you and your child. We'll plan our approach carefully and be prepared for any developments. But first, we need to respond to the divorce petition and start the process." "Thank you," Christine said, feeling relieved. They spent the next few minutes reviewing the divorce papers while Linda explained every step to her. Since Christine insisted she didn't want financial compensation, Linda only settled for what was fair. With Linda's help, Christine asserted her stance on the division of their landed property, which they bought together. It was the only thing she wanted. She reminded Linda that she wanted the divorce settled efficiently and without delay. "I'll cover preliminary negotiations with Sam's attorney from here on," Linda said. "I'll also prepare for potential custody issues because, trust me, I'll surely come. But don't worry, I have it under control." 2 hours later, Christine signed the response and it was sent out. "How do you feel?" Stan asked as they left the attorney's office. Christine sighed. "Relieved," she said. "Also apprehensive." "Why apprehensive?" "I don't know. I wish I could wipe out Sam from my life story, you know." "Don't say that." Stan led them to his car. "You once loved him and gave him your all. He would always be a part of your story. But if you continue to look back, you will not move on." "When did you start sounding so smart?" Christine teased, touched by his words. Stan laughed. "I've literally always sounded like this. Sounds like you're just starting to see me." Christine met his soft gaze and wondered why he always looked at her with such adoration. She came with a lot of baggage, and he had never once made her feel like trouble. "I'm so hungry," she said awkwardly. "Let's go get something to eat." Stan smiled. "I know a place." They went to a cute little cafe in town. "This is a new place?" Christine asked as they walked in. "Yup. I come here at least 4 times every week. They're that good." Christine playfully rolled her eyes. "Let's see." "Do you still love scones?" Stan asked as they sat down at a window booth. She gasped. "You still remember my love for scones?" Stan scoffed. "I remember everything about you," he said. "How could I forget?" Their gazes met again, and Christine's breath ceased in her throat. Thankfully, the waitress came, and Stan looked away to talk to her. It was true that time flew when you were having fun, because Christine didn't notice how much time had passed until she could barely see 2 feet in front of her. Stan escorted her back home and she waved him goodbye at the door with a shy smile. Her parents were in the living room when she entered, and she tried to sneak back into the house without alerting them, but her mother caught her right when she neared the hallway. "Darling, you're back," Mom said. "Have you been hanging out with Stan all day?" "We were at the attorney's," Christine answered. "All day?" Dad quirked his brows. Christine rolled her eyes. "I'll be down in a few minutes," she said, hurrying down the hall. "Let me take a quick shower." Before they could argue, Christine disappeared into her room. Her phone beeped, and she thought it was Stan because she'd told him to let her know when he got home. It was a message from Sam. "Please pick up my calls. I want to talk to you about the petition." The phone started ringing as soon as his message came in, and for a moment she considered taking the call but decided against it. There was nothing to discuss. Linda had assured her that subsequent conversations would be had by her and Sam's attorney. She let the call go unanswered. By the time she showered and changed into nightwear, he had called 10 times. A text came in from Stan. "I'm home. Thanks for a wonderful day." She should be thanking him. He had taken her to Linda, who seemed very efficient. Then he took her to that beautiful eatery where they served the best scones she had ever eaten. From there, they went to the park where they talked and caught up with everything in each other's lives. She sent a response to Stan. "I should be thanking you. I had an amazing time as well." She had just hit send when a text from Sam entered. Christine groaned because Sam was ruining the vibe. She clicked on his text and gasped at how malicious it was. "I'm going to make sure you get nothing, not even the house. I wanted to take you back, but now I don't want that anymore. Good luck trying to live without me. I'm simply going to move on, and oh, I can finally have kids." Christine stared at the message for minutes, wondering how she didn't see the signs of Sam's hatred. It was right there. Thankfully, Stan sent her another text. "Can I call you?" Christine responded with a yes, and Stan's call came in seconds later. It didn't take long for her to forget all about Sam and his threats. 3 months after sending her petition response and agreeing to the divorce, Linda was finally able to secure a date for mediation. Despite explaining her urgency to get the divorce done, Sam had refused to budge. He was delaying the entire procedure, and although he always had good excuses, Christine was sure he was doing it deliberately. She was already 4 months pregnant and didn't have a noticeable bump, but Christine chose to wear a flowy dress just in case. They weren't ready to reveal her pregnancy just yet. On the day of the mediation, Stan offered to drive her to the location, and no matter how much she tried to convince him not to bother, he refused. Christine wished he wouldn't stress himself because, according to Linda, he wouldn't be allowed into the room during the mediation session, but he said he didn't mind and would wait in the car. Linda was already at the location, according to the text message she sent Christine, as they drove into the garage. Christine texted back to let her know she also just arrived. She turned to Stan as he turned off the engine. For the past 4 months, this man had been her shield and comfort. The fact that she had Stan was proof that a god out there was looking out for her. Stan made it all better, and she didn't know what she would have done without him. "I don't know how long I'd be in there," she said. "I'm not sure how comfortable I'll be, knowing you're out here just sitting in the car." Stan laughed. "I'll find a cafe to sit in then. Will that make you comfortable?" She nodded. "I think we drove past one on our way here." "I'm aware." Stan pulled her close. This was another thing she loved about him. He was always generous with his hugs, and being in his arms like this made her feel safe. She relaxed into his embrace, wishing she could stay here all day. "Don't be nervous, okay?" He kissed her forehead. "Be strong. You know what you want. Go for it." "Thank you, Stan. Honestly." "You're welcome," he said. "Now go smash it." Seeing Sam again after 4 months did nothing for her. Her heart did not quicken, her stomach did not fall, no butterflies, just anything. After being with him for almost 4 years, Christine expected her life to be shattered when she left him, and that nearly happened until Stan stepped in. He saved her, and she could genuinely say she was over Sam. Sam almost stared a hole through her as she walked in, and she greeted him with a smile before greeting his attorney. There was also a new face, which Linda introduced as the mediator. "Good morning, everyone," the mediator started when they settled. "My role is to facilitate a discussion to help you reach a favorable agreement. Everything we discuss here is confidential, so please feel free to discuss openly." "Thank you," Christine said. "I don't want this to last longer than it needs to be. I need this divorce settled like yesterday, but Sam seemed to be delaying this for some reason. My priority is to retain the house. If Sam doesn't want that, he can buy me out." "If I may interject," Tom, Sam's attorney said. "Sam is feeling very pressured to make a decision quickly. This is a financial decision, and we must ensure all implications are understood. Rushing might lead him to make a decision that isn't in his best interests." "I don't see what you mean," Linda said. "It's straightforward business. They both bought the house with equal pay. Now, she wants to retain the house with him, or be paid back her share, around $350,000. It's not that hard." "Could you elaborate on what you think your client needs?" the mediator asked Tom. "He needs time to consider the current price of the house." "We already did," Linda answered. "And you've had 3 months to do that research." As the session continued, it became clear that Sam was the problem. When it was obvious that we weren't settling, the mediator suggested a court hearing. The attorneys will handle filing the motions and everything else, so Christine left, eager to return to Stan. His car was in the garage, and she wondered if he went to the cafe or sat in the car all through. It had been a few hours. She was almost in his car when she heard Sam's familiar voice behind her. "Christine, wait." With a tired sigh, she turned to him. "Can I help you?" "Christine, come on." He ran a hand through his hair. "How can you move on so fast?" She rolled her eyes. "Is that all?" "I really have to go." He cursed under his breath. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. "Think carefully about this. We can still settle everything amicably." "Christine, are you ready to leave?" She jumped at the sound of Stan's voice and turned to see him leaning against the vehicle. Sam narrowed his eyes at Stan before turning to her. "Who is that?" "Mind the business that pays you, Sam," Christine answered and walked away. As they drove out of the garage, Sam remained in the same spot, gaping at them. "I take it that's Sam?" Stan asked. "Yeah. How did it go?" "Sam is delaying everything," she groaned. "He's so annoying. He wants me to rethink like I've not had months to think about it. I want him out of my life." Stan smiled. "So what's the next thing?" "A court hearing. Linda will fill me in with all the details." Christine didn't want to return home yet, so Stan drove them to a park. It was late afternoon, so no one was around, just the two of them sitting side by side. "I know you're probably regretting why you got involved with me," Christine said. "What?" Stan frowned. "Number, I'm happy to be doing this with you, Christine." At that moment, as they gazed into each other's eyes, Christine got carried away and attempted something she had always wanted to do. She leaned in for a kiss. Her lips had almost touched his when he gently held her shoulders and turned away. The rejection stung and brought her crashing back to reality with a thud. "I'm so sorry." She rushed to her feet. "So sorry, Stan. It won't happen again." "Hey, hey." Stan grabbed her arm and gently pulled her onto his lap. She sat rigidly, deeply embarrassed. What was she thinking? "You don't know how badly I want to kiss you, Chris," he said. I really want to. I think about it day and night. Then why did you stop me? Because I'm not sure why you're doing it, he answered. Are you kissing me because you truly want me, or because you're angry with Sam? Christine sucked in a deep breath. Stan, I would never do that to you. Never. I don't think about Sam at all. I don't want him anymore, and I'm serious. Are you sure? Stan's eyes brightened. Because I love you, Chris, he said. I always have. Her mouth fell open, scared to tell him she loved him too, because he might not believe her. She almost didn't believe it herself, but she was truly in love with him. I want the opportunity to treat you right, he said. Sam was a fool for having you and messing it up. I understand why he's trying to stall now, and I'm afraid you'll eventually give in. Christine touched his face. Never. I will never give in to him. I don't love him anymore. I love you. Stan shook his head. Don't say things you don't mean, Chris. Please. I love you, she repeated. I'm saying it because I mean it. They stared at each other again for one long moment before wrapping steady arms around each other. Christine's heart felt light, and she knew that for the first time in years, she was finally happy. The court hearing was in a month, and it came by quickly. This time, Stan was allowed in the courtroom because it was a public one. Christine was so happy for him to be there because she and Linda would finally announce her pregnancy in the hearing. Linda intended to use it to push for a higher settlement. She would also cite emotional distress and fight for limitations on Sam's right to be involved in the kid's life. Christine kept her fingers crossed, hoping things went according to plan. If she never saw Sam again, it would be too soon. She was truly in love with Stan and wanted to spend her life with him without interference from Sam. The judge came in, and the hearing started. Court is now in session, the judge said. We are here to address the outstanding issues between Sam and Christine. I understand that mediation did not solve these issues. Please, counsellors, proceed with your presentation. Tom stepped forward. Thank you, Your Honour. Christine seeks to retain the house or be offered a buyout. As my client can't share the house with her, we have agreed to pay her $350,000 as requested. It looked like someone had finally talked some sense into Sam. The judge nodded at Tom and turned to Linda. Present your case. Certainly, Your Honour. She stepped forward. While we acknowledge Sam's offer, it isn't going to cut it for us anymore. We now request $400,000. This should be done quickly so my client can move on with her life. What? Tom frowned. Yes, Linda smiled at him, because my client just found out that she's pregnant. The courtroom fell silent for a few seconds until Sam loudly gasped. Christine. He tried to approach her table, but the stern look of Tom and the judge stalled him. Oh, God, I can't believe this. He turned to the judge. Please, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want a divorce. What are you trying to say, Mr. Bailey? The judge asked. Tom stepped forward. My client requests that the court grant him more time for reconciliation before the finalization of the divorce. Christine was distraught when the judge granted Sam 6 weeks. She couldn't believe she'd be stuck with him for another 6 weeks. It was annoying. When the judge left, she was hurrying back to Stan, whose arms were wide open to receive her. But Sam stopped her. Christine, please wait. Irritated by his incessant antics, she turned to him. What? Can we talk? They were still standing in the courtroom, with their attorneys several feet away and Stan behind her. I didn't want it to get to this, Sam whispered, his eyes rimmed with sadness. I served you the divorce papers to scare you into returning to me. I can't believe you accepted it. Please, let's get back to our senses and resolve this, Christine. Christine turned to Stan and gestured for him to come closer. He was eyeing Sam angrily, and she guessed Sam's only saving grace was that they were in the courtroom. Sam. Christine took Stan's hand and twined their fingers. Sam's eyes widened. This is my boyfriend, Stan, she said. It's barely been half a year since we separated, Sam fired. And you're already dating? You never loved me, Christine. Christine chuckled. Going by your ideology, you also never loved me, she said. seeing as you were sleeping with your secretary for 2 years, while still married to me. Please forgive me, please. Sam reached for her arm, but Stan stepped in between the both of them. Don't touch her. Get out, man! How dare you! Sam fired, but Stan maintained his cool. We left a furious Sam behind and headed to the car. Are you okay? Stan asked, helping her into the car. More than okay, she laughed. Let's go home. Instead of taking her home, Stan drove them to the park again. This was fast becoming their favourite spout. As usual, no one was there, just the two of us. Thank you for being there with me today. Christine hugged Stan. I love you. Stan gasped. Look over there, he said, pulling away and pointing at something behind her. Christine looked, but there was nothing behind her. When she returned her attention to Stan, she almost fell off the bench. Stan? Tears stung her eyes. He was on one knee before her, an engagement box open to reveal a beautiful ring. She blinked at the ring before looking into Stan's face. Will you marry me, Chris? He asked, his eyes full of love. Please. I love you, Chris. I want to do right by you and your child. But how? Christine asked. I know we've done all we can, but Sam will forever be in my life. Can you? My focus is on you, Stan said, and I'm going to keep it on you. I don't care what comes after, as long as I have you. Stan. Christine burst into tears and hurled herself at Stan. He softly put the ring on her finger and kissed her hand. Yes, I'll marry you. Thank you, Chris. He kissed her shoulder. Now let's do this together. For 6 weeks, Sam called daily, crying and begging Christine on the phone, but she was done. Her mind was made up, and her sights were set on her future with Stan. By the time the final hearing day came, Christine was already 6 months pregnant and waiting for her baby to come so they could have their wedding. As usual, Stan followed her into the courtroom. Sam came in shortly after, his eyes trained on Stan and Christine. He was approaching them when the judge came in, and they all had to assume their positions. We are here to finalize the divorce between Christine and Sam, the judge said. We have previously discussed the terms and reviewed every objection. Today, we are reaching a resolution. Counsels, over to you. Sam's attorney stepped up to take the stage. He talked about how Sam wanted to continue contesting the case, but the judge overruled that. She demanded that they provide financial records to prove the property's current market value. Linda also took center stage and fought Christine's case. After almost an hour of verbal battle, the judge had to deliberate on everything they said, so he left the courtroom for a few minutes. Moments after his return, he said the one thing Christine had been waiting almost 6 months for. Based on the evidence and terms agreed upon, the court will finalize this divorce. The following minutes were spent finalizing the facts and drawing out a payment plan for the settlement. As soon as the matter was resolved, the judge left the courtroom. Christine ran over to Stan, tears brimming from her face. Behind Stan, she clashed gazes with Sam, whose eyes were red and swollen with exhaustion. He looked like he hadn't gotten a good night's sleep, but Christine didn't care. She kissed Stan's neck and pulled away. Should we celebrate this? He asked. We should. I agree. Come on. Stan walked her out of the courtroom. I know just the place.